guys, Torres20 here, and welcome to episode 25 of Springwood. Today is part 1 of building the domestic terminal, and in a couple of days' time I'll be releasing part 2. The reason why I'm splitting this up into 2 parts is because building the domestic terminal was pretty challenging, and I do quite a lot of detail that I didn't want to miss out, so I decided to do it in 2 parts. First up, we're going to be doing the major layout of this terminal. And again, I'm going to be focusing on Sydney domestic terminal for inspiration. So Sydney Airport is broken into 2 parts, the domestic terminal and then the international terminal. And they are both connected through this airport drive, which is pretty much a highway that connects the 2. Now, Sydney Airport is definitely not the best looking airport, and it's not even the best functioning airport. However, I do like its style. I think it fits in beautifully for Springwood. For part 1, I'm going to work on the layout. I'm going to put down all these terminals, and I'm also going to put in this exclusive Springwood domestic flight terminal. And this is like what we're looking at right now. This is like an area that is just designated for Qantas flights. I'm going to put Springwood flights in this little area here. I'm going to do a hangar, work on a bit of the detail of the ground, and just general the bulk of the work. Then in part 2 we'll finish off the terminal and do a big overview of what I've done and how it all flows together. Before we get into the build, I am also taking inspiration from Newark Airport in New York, and you can just have a little speculate about what I'll be taking from this. Maybe the thumbnail kind of gave it away, but there's a real key thing that I'm taking from this airport that I super love and I really want for Springwood Airport. Anyway, let's get into the build. As you can see, I've already placed down the road layout for this domestic terminal, and it was a bit tedious, so I've decided to just leave it out of this time lapse. And just start off with plopping down this medium-sized terminal that is built by Vasimir, and he's got some really great airport assets on the workshop. Definitely go and check him out. I've put a link to his workshop in the description below. This is the medium-sized one, and it fits in really nicely for this build. I've just plopped down a whole bunch of the different pieces, and I'm just kind of looking at them to figure out how I'm going to place down the general layout of this little area. I have a bit of a hard time, and I wanted just to keep this in the time lapse because I wanted you to kind of get a bit of an idea of how I figure out where each piece is going to go. If you missed the previous episode where I worked on the layout of the airport, definitely go and check that out because it's a bit of a lead into this episode. And thanks everybody who had put in their 2 cents about what I built, because I'm definitely no expert in layouts or even airports in general. So I really appreciate everyone kind of taking that responsibility and telling me all the things I missed and all the things I nailed. Much appreciated. I'll get into this now. So I went back and fixed a whole bunch of things that people kind of mentioned about the signs and the direction of the runways, and so many of the things that people mentioned I fixed up. However, it's just classic city skylines. When I fixed it all up, then I stopped getting any flights coming into this airport, and since I haven't been able to get them back, and at the moment I'm getting flights coming into the other airports, the international side, whereas I'm not getting any flights into the domestic terminal. So I've had to kind of go back and change things, and it's the whole airport in general is kind of becoming a little bit of a mess. I'm not getting the flights as what I was getting in the first episode, which kind of makes me think that I might actually just need to totally re-lay out all the road, the taxiways and the runways and stuff like that, which is a massive pain in the ass, but I think that's just something you have to do every now and again in City Skylines. So, just kind of keep that in mind. If you see something that I didn't fix that I said I fixed, I did, but I might have gone back and changed it again. But yeah, it's just one of those quirks working with the custom airports layouts. It's just every now and again you just get a couple of bugs, and it's just like a stupid little fix, and then I can fix it, and we'll get planes again. Don't worry, I'll make sure of it. What I'm doing right now is you can see me playing with this train line here. I really wanted this train line. I wanted there to be more than just a road network coming into this airport. It wasn't working out. The train line was far too big, and I would have had to totally resize the domestic terminal, but it just I don't think I could have made it any bigger. So I was really struggling with that, with the train line sitting there, and as you can see, Sydney Airport doesn't actually have a train line. It actually does. It has a train line, but it's a subway, so it goes underneath and it hits the domestic and the international side. Squeezing an elevated station in here just was not working. By the way, how sick does these roads look coming into this side of the terminal? It looks so damn cool. By the way, I'm really conscious of the fact I'm saying terminal a lot, but I actually don't know any other way of saying, to describe what I'm doing without saying that word. So I'm gonna try really hard not to say terminal all the time, but I'm gonna say terminal all the time. Feel free to comment on how many times I say it, because I reckon it'll be pretty high. Again, this airport is super all over the place, so I kind of needed to, it's not just one building. I noticed there's actually multiple buildings all connected up, so I'm putting in quite a lot of different office blocks that are going to sit around this terminal, and I kind of like it because now I get, although I'm not getting as many domestic flights coming in, I am getting still a lot of traffic because a lot of people work around here. Right now, I am plopping down the monorail. Yes, I'm so happy to be putting down a monorail. I've been wanting to put a monorail into City Skylines for so long. I just haven't been able to justify it. It didn't feel right. And I was thinking, do I put it in the downtown, or do I put it in the nice side of, the higher end district of Springwood? But it just did not fit. It kind of just dawned on me that it would fit really nicely in the airport. Now, this is where I'm taking inspiration from Newark Airport. This airport has a monorail system called their Air Train, and it's a system where, it starts from a train station, and then it kind of hits a couple of different destinations. It hits this quite large parking lot, hits a couple of different terminals around the airport, goes to another parking lot. I think over here is also a car rental. Goes to another parking lot, and then it terminates, and then it basically repeats. And I think this works really, really nicely for Springwood. It kind of means that I can place a whole bunch of different parking places around, and maybe even like a function center, or something else where people could be using this sky rail. I don't know if you want to rename it. Feel free to rename it. But it just works beautifully. So what I'm thinking is, I think that this Skyrail will probably start from a major train station maybe closer to the downtown, and then it'll make its way past a couple of other parking lots, or even a function hall, or something a couple of other big sort of areas, and then it'll terminate at the international airport, and then it'll kind of return. I think that works really nicely, and I really love it. I actually when I went to New York, I flew out of Newark Airport, and I noticed this Skyrail air train, and it looked so awesome. It was kind of like a big shock, and I didn't really expect it. And You know, it's like nothing we have in Australia. And you know, I thought it was, and actually I'm trying to remember, I think I've noticed something similar at Beijing airport, where I think maybe the train line, it's a bit more of a train line rather than a monorail. And anyway, I think it fits in really nicely. So super happy to have some monorails now hitting our skyline in Springwood. Let me know what you think about it. I'm super excited about it. If you are, then great. Over here, I'm placing down a road that's going to act as a bit of an opportunity for people to take another loop around the terminal. Let me talk about the road layout of this. So the terminal has a one-way system. It goes in one direction, and then it it does a full loop. So you can kind of start from one side of the terminal and then go to the other. And then I've built that road right there so that people can access this parking lot again, and then they can also go through the terminal once more if they kind of miss their stop. I mean, I feel like every time I go to Sydney Airport, I always miss I never park at the right spot, and then I have to do another loop. That gives that opportunity. Right now I'm building a bit of a parking lot. Parking is a major part of airports, so I plot down quite a lot. I'll skip past quite a bit of it as well because it is kind of tedious, boring. I've plopped down a lot of these cars that are just props, so it's not a functional car park, but I really like having control of where cars park. You probably saw that I copied one parking lot and just pasted it around this lot. The reason why I do that is because it's so much easier. The colors of the cars actually change when I plop them into new spaces, and then I go through now using Move It and just delete chunks of cars just to get, make it not as noticeable that it's a copy job. You don't even notice, which is such an easy way to make a parking lot, especially of this size. I do this all the time, and makes it so much easier to actually build this, areas that actually have a lot of cars. By the way, now I'm actually going a little bit rogue with my layout. I've kind of deviated pretty far from the Sydney layout of this terminal and just kind of do my own spin on it. I try to follow things, and it's funny, and I do the same thing when I draw pictures. You kind of follow something closely, and then all of a sudden, you might change a couple of aspects, like adding in the monorail, or making the road layouts just slightly different, and then all of a sudden, everything else that you build suddenly changes. Whereas, if you follow something totally exactly the same, then you end up, I guess you do build pretty much exactly what you want, what you're looking at. Right now, I'm pretty much changed the way this is where I pretty much changed from Sydney way. And I didn't want to build exactly the domestic terminal of Sydney, but I did want to follow, at least the base layout of it to get a bit of an idea. Getting back to what I'm doing right now, though, is I'm not using Traffic President mods because, I use it for other cities that I build. For instance, we use it in Osara, that collaboration I'm doing with Skib. I also use it for my Australian series, but for Springwood, I don't use it. Reason why I don't use it is because Traffic President, although it is it's actually quite a heavy mod for your game. It does change. It will add it would add a bit of strain onto your CPU, and even onto your graphics. And I know in terms of what you can achieve with it is probably worth it. I actually would rather just not use it because in my mind, what this city is and what I'm building in this city, it doesn't really revolve around kind of getting the best traffic network. I'm kind of more going for a style of a realistic giant city. So in terms of these intersections working in a way that probably could maximize the flow of traffic, Traffic President would be perfect for it. However, I'm just not going to use it. I'd rather use it in another series, and just let traffic do its thing in Springwood. But to be honest, I'd actually really welcome more traffic in Springwood. I don't get enough, which is kind of strange to say, but I really I kind of wish I had more traffic, more gridlock, because apparently LA is a lot more gridlock than actually City Skylines really lets up. So I'm kind of welcoming a higher population and more traffic, more peeps. However, it's probably better for my FPS to probably have a smaller amount of people coming in. That's the thing that I would really love to see happen in this at this terminal, is seeing a lot more traffic coming in. To be honest, I played so much with getting planes to really land on this terminal, and I just can't figure it out. I do have a feeling, like I was saying before, I have to totally delete everything that I built in terms of the taxiways and the runways, which would be such a pain in the ass to do. But it's really important that this airport functions, and it's really important that this area gets a lot of traffic. So I'm really hoping that I can get that going for at least part 2, and at least for the cinematics, because I'd really love to see just full-on traffic coming in and out of this terminal. But like I said before, we do have a lot of offices and workplaces around here, so there are still a little bit of traffic coming in and out. Right now I'm detailing just a little bit of this underground part. It's not underground, it's below. I mean, it's multi-layered, I guess. It's I'm just kind of, again, going rogue. I'm not really focusing on any sort of layout or any sort of style. But I am kind of focusing on these decals, because these decals do add a lot in terms of adding a bit of depth to the build. Also, like this little this undergrowth section underneath the monorail that I'm building. I think it looks really cool. And you might see like little bits of advertising. It's amazing, and I've spoken about this before, but it's amazing how much advertising can make your city look way more realistic. Right now, I'm also playing with this side of the terminal. This is where the hangar was meant to sit, and it wasn't until I started to play with the placement of these hangars that I realized that the size of them was actually just giant. And when you actually look at hangars in real life, they are giant, because they do fit these planes in them, and these planes aren't small, they're quite massive, and they need lots of room. It's not like you're parking a car in a garage, you're parking a friggin' plane into a hangar. Like you can't just clip a wing. There needs to be lots of space, and Ronix does a really good job. I mean, these hangars are made by Ronix. He does a really good job at making the size of these hangars appropriate to the size of the planes in this game. In terms of the size of the planes in the game, if you did miss the last episode, I'm using custom planes made by Bsqiklehausen, who has so kindly made planes that are super retro and super 80s, and I'm totally in love with them. You can actually see them scattered around this field as I build. I'm using them as a guide to how big I need to, I guess the scale of everything else. You can see me kind of plastering down the taxiways right now, and I'm kind of using the planes as guides, because I don't really want them driving around as the taxiways, clipping wings, or hitting buildings and stuff like that. I mean, City Skylines, I feel like that's where it kind of lets us down, is the scale of things. I think the scale, even when I first started this game in 2015 or whatever, I always looked at the buildings and kind of went, ugh, that doesn't really seem right. The scale just seems a bit off. I felt like SimCity did a far better job at getting the scale correct. I mean, we're pretty lucky in terms of the assets that have been made by the asset creators on the Steam Workshop. but I still think in terms of the game, it's still not fantastic. That is my only letdown with the actual game. I think the game's freaking fantastic. What I'm doing now is I'm placing down a couple of office blocks, some industrial areas that you can probably see around the domestic terminal of Sydney. Like I said before, I don't really know how airports work. I am totally just going off Google Earth. I said in the last episode as well that I really, the more I kind of look into how airports operate, the less I want to build an airport because they're so complicated. So I'm really just building, and then I love your suggestions. Here's my cry to you guys. In the comments below, please hit me up if you are an airport guy, if you know your aviation, if you know Sydney Terminal, or you know another airport that you'd like to talk about. Hit me up, because I take on board everything that people say, and I really would like a lot of information about how airports operate and little things that I can change. You know, like don't tell me that my roads need to be bigger, because I'm not going to change the roads. Don't tell me that that there shouldn't be a car park in the middle of the terminal like that. Like, don't tell me that. I'm not going to change that. But little things I can change, and if you point me in the right direction, I'll change them. Definitely change them. I'm trying to build a somewhat realistic place with, I want to say minimal effort, but I'm going to a lot of effort. But I don't really want a complete game changer, so don't throw me any game changers. And maybe even like hit me up now, because what I'm building right now, I know that I've got some serious inaccuracies. This area of the airport I'm really unfamiliar with. So shooting over to some Google images of the domestic airport in Sydney, this sort of side, I guess, is more the maintenance and the industrial side of the airport. Jeez, I don't know, maybe. Like, judging by some of these like sheds and industrial ports, I guess, they kind of seem like they would handle a bit more of the, cargo side of the airport. But like, I can't really figure out exactly what they're used for, how they're used, and how much I can replicate in City Skylines. So I'm going for like a real base, like surface level sort of style right now, where I'm just kind of placing down some industrial buildings. And I do kind of want to keep it that way. Like, I don't really want to get into, like, I'm not going for like the most realistic airport, but I am kind of going for a bit of realism. So, I mean, hit me up. Like, if you can kind of tell what's going on in this section of the airport, let me know, because I would really like to know. And if there's anything, like any little bits, any things it can tell me, like if you can tell me that this shed would not exist within this airport because it doesn't fit, like, or like it should belong on the outside of the airport, like, tell me. If I've got a truck that doesn't seem to work, like, tell me. I'll probably take most of it on board, because again, I do want to build a realistic airport, but I don't really want it to completely change everything I've just built. And sticking with the theme of Springwood, it's kind of a bit of a city that I'm getting like the general layout, but I'm not going into too much detail. But yeah, definitely hit me up, because I do love reading everything that people are talking about. Like, in particular, like, I know I'm going to get some triggered people with the that industrial building you can see on the left there. Like, I'm pretty sure that's a grain silo, or like it's like a grain industrial building. It really does not fit in this airport. However, I'm trying to kind of get a sense of the industrial side of this terminal and how like the airport kind of looks in general. But yeah, I mean, that's a bit of a mumbling rampage. I might just move on from there, because I am actually getting into the site, like, building area that I really, really enjoy. This is like what I said before. In Sydney Airport, we have a terminal that is pretty much designated, not pretty much, it is designated just for Qantas flights. And this is like its own separate terminal. So if you're catching a Qantas flight, you go to this side. I've taken that on board and I've made a Springwood domestic terminal. I really love it. Like, I think it looks awesome just having the same style of plane on one side. I've also have the Skyrail. I don't know why I keep calling it Skyrail. Maybe that's what I want to call it. The monorail is also targets this side of the terminal. So I guess if you're coming from the downtown of Springwood and you know you're catching a domestic flight from the Springwood side of the airport, you'd go and catch the Skyrail to this side. I bloody love that. I think that's really cool. By the way, I'm totally aware that I've placed these boarding gates the wrong way around. I switch them around, so don't stress. I'm also fully aware that these gates, you probably need more space between the planes. However, I'm like, in terms of size, in terms of scale, and we've been over this, like City Skylines is just, this is the scale you get. And I wanted there to be quite a lot of traffic. I wanted there to be a lot of planes on this side. So, I try to squeeze in as many as I can, but keeping within that's still, the style of realism. This side of the terminal is designated for other companies, other airline companies within Springwood, but also a couple of other Springwood airlines. Again, following this off the domestic terminal in Sydney, and I'm following the line work pretty closely. Well, when I say pretty closely, I'm trying to get the general gist of the line work and, basing it off that. The reason why I'm not going into huge amounts of detail in terms of lines, I'm missing out on tons and tons of lines, is there's a couple of reasons. First up, painting down decals takes up tons of props, and building a giant city like Springwood, I don't have a huge amount of props to work with. And also, drawing lines is so painfully slow, and I find super boring. I only really do it because I kind of need a little bit of that realism, but I'm also working in terms of Springwood, I'm working on like the bigger picture for a city rather than the real fine details. I'm also plopping down just huge amounts of props. I'm pretty much just searching through my asset collection and finding any props that are based on like an airport style, and you can see me also here just sort of working with these lines because I'm pretty sure they'd be reversed on the other side. So much copying and pasting. It's the easiest and the best form of achieving a look without having to go with huge amounts of detail. Springwood there is like a lot of detail in Springwood, but at the same time, I get so bored painting down these lines, and I think you guys would get pretty bored watching me paint down all these lines. So I'd rather just copy them because it's just so much easier and it means I can focus on some of the more funner stuff. We are starting to get pretty close to the end of the episode, and let me talk about what we're going to do in part 2 of episode 25. So I pretty much finished the whole layout of this airport in this part. However, I will go into a lot more of the detail in part 2, as well as working on some fast food joints that are going to sit in the entrance side of the domestic terminal. And also something a bit more interesting, I think, is I'm going to be putting in I feel like it's like a private, I don't know, I can't really work it out. I'm kind of basing this off these images that you're looking at now. It's kind of like a separate side of the airport, and it's definitely not something that is around the international side of the terminals. However, I feel like being around the domestic side, I think it's probably a bit more of a, I don't know, like maybe like more local flights or flight schools or something like that. However, I kind of just model it as if it's a smaller aircraft area. So I'll be going to that detail. And also some parks that are going to sit around here, and I'll also be doing a live play to give a bit of an overview of how this terminal works and a bit more of an insight to the hidden details that you might miss out on in the cinematics at the end, which is so close. Definitely stick around for the cinematics. They're damn tasty. And thanks again for watching. Definitely show your appreciation by hitting that like button or even subscribing if you haven't already. Twitter's a good place to follow me if you want more Springwood action. Instagram's also great. But yeah, that's it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. See ya.